Part 2. The ogre was knocked down and went to smash Ash and Brock, but before it could, the sons of Pallet attacked. They sucked and lost, though, so Ash and Brock were knocked unconscious by the mighty blow of Goliath's hand. They fell to the ground in the shape of an E3. Just then, the heart of the witch began to glow, and Schmitty was healed. Schmitty gathered what strength he had, which was a lot because he was thinking about banging the witch, and used his dead seagull, which was stiff since it was dead, as a wand to cast the Patronus spell on Goliath, and he was killed. Chapter 8. What to do? Schmitty, completely baffled as to what to do about his unconscious friends, decided to drag them to a nearby hospital, where a doctor overcharged him and said there was nothing he could do. So Schmitty stabbed the doctor with the seagull's beak, which had been resurrected from the hospital. Once everyone was back to health, or 3 minutes later, Clitterfer said, "Onward to Celadon City! That's where I'm confident they're keeping Ozzy." Then our heroes left the town and proceeded into the dark, moist woods. Chapter 9. The Dark, Moist Woods. As they trekked through the mud that slowed them down greatly, Ash decided to pull out his harmonica and play some magical tunes to pass the time because he knew it would make Schmitty giddy. But what Ash didn't know is that the tune was so magical it greatly increased their hunger. "I want food! I want so much food! I want it right now!" Schmitty the greedy complained. Brock roared in reply, "Yum! Food! I could eat a whole horse's wang." Horse's wang. That's my favorite, Clitterfer responded. Ash realized he too was getting very hungry. Just then, a black-tipped silver horse from the land of whatever the land I just recently said was, trotted by with the hugest wang ever. Clitterfer pulled out his sword of justice and lunged at the horse. "Looks like wang's back on the menu, boys." However, the black-tipped horse was a trap, and it transported the heroes to the moist dark cavern. Chapter 10. Caverns and Ladders. The Tri-Mat Dalai Lama was at full readiness, constantly searching the cavern for danger. They came across an old bat that was dried up like a prune. Gross. There was guano, which is bat poop in case you don't know, all over the cavern, and our heroes began to sink in it. "Holy stinking bat poop, Batman!" Schmitty cried as he sent out his seagull to help. Instead of helping, the seagull just flew out of the cave. "Aw, shit. That seagull's an idiot," Schmitty said. Brock pulled out his bow and attached a rope to one of the arrows and shot it into the seagull, who fell outside the cave. The seagull was picked up by the most unlikely creatures imaginable. An onyx of Texas. Now the onyx of Texas was a crafty and wise creature who had the strength of 20 goats. It wielded a long stout, which it used to beat people away. People like Gary, who was the queerest person in all the land. But it was also hindered by its crutch that it bore everywhere it went, showing its injury of recent battles. Basically, it was a total badass. Now Onyx saw our heroes in trouble and agreed to help them out, only if it would get to keep the seagull as a reward. Schmitty thought about this for a moment, but agreed because he knew he could get thousands of seagulls from his homeland anytime he wanted. Now Onyx carried around 2 large drums of autism that he rocked out on, and then the guano danced to its beat. It loosened enough so our heroes got out of there. Basically, they just ran up the Onyx. Chapter 11. Hopes and Dreams Reset. Back on the road again, but a little confused as to their exact location, the Tri-Mat Dalai Lama plus Clitterfer pushed forward on their journey, more determined now than ever to find Ozzy. And Onyx, now with its new dead seagull friend, journeyed alone in the opposite direction. That's just the way it rolls. A free spirit. Untamable. Pure, raw power. Well, the quartet was still hungry as hell, so they looked up some scrumptious snackums. They noticed some weird-looking shrooms along the path, so they wolfed them down in an instant. But what they didn't know is that the shrooms were magical and made them way too full, so they vomited for days. Chapter 12. The Ulti-Ash Decision. It was on the 12th hour of the 4th day when our heroes were feeling better and arrived in the gruesome city of Viridian. They arrived in the anus of Viridian, also called the Yeti. They talked to some of the townfolk to see if they had heard anything about Ozzy or the evil Tower of Zors. However, the townsfolk were infested with some sort of plague, probably the gay, and were being controlled by the evil dark ruler Trunkles. They simply gurgled out ununderstandable sounds that made no sense to our heroes, which pissed them off. "Cut off their tongues for their mockery." Clitterfer however, was not a dumbass, and he used his rod of destiny, his wang, reflecting the light of the beacon of the library, to create the one eye, which he saw into Trunkles' plan. Clitifer, being a hero, could not understand entirely the dark, evil logic and words of Trunkles' mind, but only saw pictures of the Trimat Dalai Lama's death. Trunkles was marshalling an army from the land of Johto to infiltrate the land of Kanto, and use its own residents to turn on their own kind, making it easier for the Johto people to invade the land. Ash realized that this was the time to make his decision, and it would be ultimate, so he said, "Fuck the dumb dog for now, let's attack Johto!" "To war!" Clitifer cried, and instantly the town of Viridian snapped out of their mind control, because the spell could only be broken by the words, "to war," in that order. But Trunkle's puppet, Gary, was not swayed, and he tried now more than ever to influence the people of Kanto, but only the native, some beautiful but mostly ugly, women fell to his idiocracy, and Gary took 1/3 of them, since Kanto is filled mainly with women, of Kanto's population. "So be it," Clitifer responded. "There's a presidential election." No more was needed because Gary was overcome with the challenge and was no longer a problem for our heroes. He vowed that he would become president. The 4 sexy men gathered their Kanto people and rallied them together. It didn't matter if they were from Pallet or Viridian or even Saffron. Onyx even gathered the clan from Texas to help the cause. They all gathered together in a huge meeting and formed a plan of attack. Chapter 13, Civil War. Gary gathered what people he could from the towns that still offered a cause, and he held up a white flag of truce to our heroes that said, "I offer a truce as a token of my goodwill. Meet me in front of the Viridian gym without your armies." Clitifer agreed and met Gary for his obvious trap. Clitifer sent out scouts ahead, dumb flat chests, who were all banged up, literally, to see what would happen to them. None returned. "Damn, Gary must have knocked them up, aside the head, and now they're dead. We should attack but now before it's too late." With one blast of his mighty dong horn, Schmitty gathered the troops. Clitifer and company marched into downtown Viridian to meet Gary, but they knew it was a trap. Gary jumped out with a George ambush and attacked our heroes. However, our heroes were not afraid, though they all whipped out their trusty weapons. The battle was fierce, and just when it looked like our heroes had won, Johto surprise attacked Kanto. "Turn your attention to the north!" They came with their olifants, their war houses, and condoms in an attempt to trample each Kanto person standing. But Clitifer knew they couldn't win, so he mustered up a handful of the best, mostly main characters, and fled to the swamps of tranquility for safety. Just then, Onyx arrived with the warriors of Texas. It told Clitifer to rally his troops up once more because he had some Johto ass to be kicked. Brock then called his Asian warriors, who were skilled in the many ways of archery. Although his numbers were few meaning many, Brock promised Clitifer the Asians could reproduce quicker than atom cells. "China, billion people, that was no accident." And Schmitty the Greedy called upon his Utards for help, but no one came because they knew Schmitty really wasn't from their land. He has a mysterious dark past that we'll get into later. Ash thought about calling somebody, but then realized he didn't need no f***ing help. Chapter 14. The cry heard round the field. The stage was set, the troops were rallied, the blood was pumping, and everyone knew that the Onyx was getting bigger and that this wasn't going to be a cheap-ass ending like in Monty Python. However, the Johto numbers were too many, and more were needed, so Clitifer told Schmitty to blow on Ash's dong horn to call on the Wafer Clan, the elite Hyats. "Hell no," Schmitty the Greedy responded. "Screw you guys," and he stomped off into the dark woods, never looking back. Mysterious. Blood soaked the field as the battle raged on. Fierce flesh of both man and beast was flying in every direction as people were hacked up here and there. Kids, mothers, children, all dead. Brock and his Asian brethren continued to shoot Johto people with their arrows with deadly accuracy. Ash used his hammer to crush people's entire bodies as their bones would turn to dust. Clitifer sliced and diced his way through the hordes of disgusting, pervious, slimy, ugly, moldy Jehotians. Chapter 15. The Tale of Ash the Great. My favorite chapter. Flashback. During the battle, Ash the Great stepped over dead carcasses as he approached the Johto army. He looked upon their thousands with hatred in his blood-red colored eyes. His fingers grinded against his mighty sledgehammer, and particles of dried blood fell to the ground. Intense. Beads of perspiration formed upon his brow as he knew the moment of destruction was at hand. Ash crushed the army and leaped into the crowd of impossible odds. That is, impossible for any normal person. He sledged their domes, which made their skulls obliterate into many pieces. He was too quick for the dumb Jodo armies, as they could not complete with his hammering madness. Chapter 16. The Tale of Brock the Grand. Flashback. During the battle, Brock used his Asian eyes, saw the threat, and dominated them with his poison-tipped arrows. Brock killed 300 women, and the rest were whores. And that's how the story ends. Well, I mean, it clearly continues, but I don't know what the ending is. And I don't need to. You see, it's a bedtime story, so whomever you're telling it to will be asleep before Gary even makes an appearance. I know I usually was. Well, thanks for listening to this especially long episode, and tune in next time with our regular broadcast. Goodbye!